Okie dokie, there we go. Always got something on these streams. It probably won't be the last time we have some audio go astray on this session, but we're here, we're up and running, and it's been a while since I did a stream because I have been in the process of moving into a new place, and so getting everything set up, getting everything going, that has been a bit of a task to do, but I think we are, for the most part, set up. I finally set up the last thing for this space, which is that behind me, there is, oh, and we already lost our, we always lose the camera at some point in this session. Let's see, did we get it back? There we go. And it's off again. There we go. Let me see if I can fix this more permanently. This camera never wants to work on these streams. Let's see. Does that do anything for us? Come on now. Stop misbehaving. Oh boy. This camera is such a train wreck. Come on. Work for me. Work for me. This is the great live stream. Okay, the camera's back on, but I'm not seeing it here in OBS. A classic. There we go. Well, we'll see how long that lasts. But yeah, so we're back here. We're set up. Still have some kinks to work out, clearly. Maybe it's time I just get like a different camera set up and see. It works flawlessly when I do a zoom, but the moment I start using OBS and hit the record button, it'll work for hours if I'm not actually recording or streaming. But the moment I hit that stream button, then suddenly the camera just wants to constantly disconnect. So that's a big bummer. But that aside, it looks like, at least to some extent, it is functioning. So you guys can let me know. But as I was saying before, finally got this place set up, finally rocking and rolling, which is nice. And behind me, this table here is doubling as my station for my micro studio. And so above this painting, there is actually a mounted rod that I can pull down, slide in a backdrop, set it back up, pull the backdrop down, clamp it onto the edge of this table, and then be able to use it like I was doing my studio at the other place. The downside there is that, you know, in the other place, I could record content, I could do live streams, and no one would ever see the mess that I was making. And so the downside is, like, now when I do that, it's obviously going to be in the background of any live stream that I do or any calls that I'm on, you know, for work. So is it the perfect setup? No, definitely not. But maybe one day we will have the perfect setup, but it's working for me so far. So yeah, this is in the new place. Usually, for those of you who do watch my YouTube videos, typically that is done from kind of this angle over here. It's like a camera set up over here. I'm stationed like this, and then I record that way. So the background for my YouTube video is actually off to this other side. So the nice thing is it does give me a different background than what is in the video, talking heads, because that was always a thing. The talking head background was the same as my live stream background. And, you know, that can be a pro or a con depending. So we're trying out something new. And I'm actually going to pull up this video and just make sure things are running, you know, even halfway decent. Let's see. I see the live stream and I hear myself talking. Great. So we are good, at least for now. But yeah, this is the first live stream that I've done since I moved in. I meant to do one last month because May was going to be like the first one. And I was even maybe thinking I would do one in April, but getting everything set up, you know, there's still a few things to do. And so I never got around to streaming. Not that, you know, that's that big of a deal, but I have been posting. I did maintain posting and for the most part doing shorts as well. So I'm proud that I didn't drop off the face of the earth in that regard. But I'm excited to be back, do some live stream. So as always, if you're tuning in for the first time, let me know what you want to talk about. Obviously, photography YouTube channel. But yeah, let me know what you're interested in, what questions you have. I have a few things that I'm going to talk about. And, you know, if you're not watching live, you can still participate in the conversation, ask questions, submit topics. And obviously it won't be live, but I do go back and I comment on any new comments I get after the stream. So I will still interact with you in that regard. And in the future live stream, maybe a topic that was previously submitted will be discussed. So that can always happen too. But yeah, what is on the plate for January? What am I talking about? July is what I meant to say, because we are almost in July. It is the 17th, so we're more than halfway through June. I will be photographing an IndyCar race. And so that is one of the things I wanted to talk about in the live stream, was that I recently picked up a new lens for this endeavor, right? Because I have switched from my old Sony gear over to the Canon R7. That was like a year ago. And I have the Sigma 18 to 50 on here. Nifty lens for sure. I know they just announced a brand new lens. But I've got that lens. I also have the 56mm prime, but neither one of those are really ideal for shooting a race like IndyCar, because you're going to be so far back. You want to get in nice and tight. You want to do some panning shots. So you need a different kind of lens. You need a deeper lens. And I was looking around at different lenses that that Canon have, which, you know, if you're a Canon shooter, you know, right now, this is a temporary problem, but right now there is a deficit of lens, especially if you're moving from a brand like Sony, where there are so many. I mean, there's like hundreds of options if you include third-party lens. So the pickings are slim, and I opted to do something that may end up being a mistake or a good idea. I'm not sure. But what I did was I opted to go with a older Canon EF lens. So this is the EF 70 to 300 4 to 5.6. So, and it is an L lens. So there's at least that, but it is a variable aperture lens. So this is the bad boy fully set up here. And then I do have the adapter on here. So this is the EF to RF adapter, which obviously you have to have if you're shooting the Canon R7. To be honest, I didn't see much info about this lens online, especially in relation to specifically the Canon R7. So it was a little bit of a blind buy. There was like one review I think I eventually found where they did kind of compare it, I want to say, to the 100 to 400 RF lens, which was the other one in the running. But I couldn't get past the fact that it was f5.6 to f8. That bothered me, because I'm sure it is usable, especially during daylight. That's what I'm going to be doing at IndyCar, is shooting in daylight. But it just bothered me that it's such a I don't know. It's not the aperture I would expect out of a Canon lens. And I know they say, oh, you can just pump up the ISO, but honestly, I don't want to. I don't think many people do want to. I want to shoot the ISO that is appropriate for the shot. I don't want to shoot a arbitrarily higher ISO because of the lens. But anyway, that got me looking elsewhere. Also, price-wise, I wanted to see if I could get a better price. And that brought me to the Canon 70-300 4-5.6 L lens. And I figured that, if it's an L lens, maybe there will be enough resolution for the really demanding Canon R7 sensor. And so I bought it. Got it on eBay, got the lens. I have gone out and tested it to mixed results. But I do want to say, I think the mixed results component is that I just don't typically shoot lens this long. And so my personal skill is what is the issue. So I reviewed some images after a couple times shooting it, and I was like, oh no, I made a mistake. And I'm going to show you guys some of those examples here on this live stream. But I was like, oh no, I made a mistake. I should have just gone with the RF, would have had faster autofocus, would have had better stabilization, and it probably would have been sharper. I made a mistake, and I was like really bummed about that. But then I kind of reassessed, and I went out and shot again, and I'll show you these other shots as well, where I was really kind of tucking in the elbows, right? Tuck in the elbows, stabilize, go into hunchback mode, and then also rapid fire a couple shots. And then I had a lot more success. So it was mostly my own personal style, shooting more standard or wide angle lenses and not having to worry about that as much. So I did get much better results. Maybe still not as great as I would have hoped, but definitely doable. So it's going to work. And I want to pull those up. But again, if you guys enjoy the stream, throw me a thumbs up if you liked it, or if you do like it, we're still going. And then also, if you have thoughts, opinions, comments, drop them in there. I'm jumping in. I'm engaging with you guys. But I want to pull up the images that I took on this lens, because I will say, like, physically, this lens is not as heavy as it looks, and it's not as bulky as it looks, because I have a wide angle lens here, so it's going to look a little bit bulkier, but it'll fit in a bag, and when you pop the hood off, it's much more reasonable. And it does have a really solid range. I thought about going with the 100 to 400. That's kind of like the go-to one on a budget right now. But I felt like for what I normally shoot, that's going to be a little more reach than I need. I mean, I'm doing macro stuff, candy artwork, things like that. And I've already got the lens and the setup that I need for that. So I knew this was going to be something that would be, a one-trick pony in my arsenal just for photographing motorsport and IndyCar. So I didn't want to blow a ton of money buying a lens that I'm only going to use a few times, unless it goes really well and IndyCar picks up the phone and says, hey, Colton, we can't do it without you. And then in which case, I'll buy a better lens. So anyway, let me jump into studio mode. I'm going to grab a recording here, and I'm going to pull up Lightroom, and I just want to show some of the shots that I got with this, and we can kind of see what the experience was. Hopefully this might also be beneficial for anyone who's kind of considering one of these older lenses for a Canon setup. So let's see. Gosh, you realize how long it's been? Like, even when it's been just a month of not streaming, suddenly you forget how everything works. Here we go. All right, so this was actually an okay shot, if I'm being honest. We'll jump into developer mode. This isn't really the one I wanted to show. This was just one I was looking at. And this is not even the right one that I was looking at. It was this one. This is with a few edits applied. You know me, I only do minor touch-ups. I'm not going crazy on this thing. But this was me, holding the lens, right? Got my camera, tucking in those elbows, tucking them in. Stable as can be. The wind couldn't pull me. And if we zoom in here, and honestly, I think the focus point was this. You can tell this is a bit sharper than even this was. But hold on, what were we at? We were at f8, ISO 400, 1/1250. So funny, I'm shooting at f8 anyway. Might as well have gotten the other lens, but that's fine. So if we jump back in here, developer mode, get the full resolution, this is what we're working with. And granted, you guys aren't going to be seeing this in full resolution, so I will illustrate and alliterate what I'm seeing here. But it's sharp. It's in focus. There's no problems there. There is no, handshake motion blur. We've got a fast enough shutter speed. We're tucked in tight. There is maybe that slight lack of that perfect resolution, right? When I was shooting Sony, I criticize Sony all day long. But one thing about Sony, even on a budget lens, when you were in focus and you were shooting at like f8, man, that thing was crisp. Like you could cut yourself. It was so sharp. And that doesn't seem to be the case with this Canon camera on any of the lens I've used. There are some that are pretty sharp, but there's quite a few that are maybe a hair softer than I would hope. But this is in focus, and this is, granted, also massively pixel peeping. So if we zoom out, this is a nice, perfectly sharp, there's plenty of resolution here. So there's no problem. It's only me like massively zooming in here at, what am I at? Literally 100%. So maybe it's not fair to compare that against like a 20 megapixel or 24 megapixel Sony sensor. But I do want to back up here a bit because I want to go back to, I want to say the first time I shot this lens, which would have been this day here. Okay, so this is me going out. I picked up the lens. Now, I had shot it the day before in my living room watching Narcos. If you haven't watched Narcos, it's a good show. Highly recommend it. I was absolutely obsessed. I'm getting off track here. So I'm watching Narcos. I'm looking out the window, and I'm like, hey, I've got the lens. It just literally showed up. I'm going to watch the show and just kind of like snap a few photos and see what the resolution looks like. Really sort of baby this experience. And I wasn't impressed. I was like, oh man, this thing looks like garbage. And I unfortunately deleted all of the images except for one. I like super zoomed in on my stereo that is my home system and took a photo. And then I looked at it and I was like, hey, this actually does look pretty sharp. But I was like resting the camera on the chair with my hand when I took it. So that made me think, okay, maybe I just need to like, do better. So I went on this walk here and I started taking photos. In camera, they look okay. But once I pull them into the software and looked at them, then it was like, ooh, these don't look so good, especially when you zoom in. Like this sign, this is terrible. Let's ignore that. But here we have like this mailbox. Guys, these are not going to be artistic, okay? For the most part. This is just me on a walk testing it out. And so, when you're looking at it full zoomed out, you're like, yeah, it looks like it's in focus, looks good. But then when you zoom in, you're like, ooh, maybe not. It looks incredibly soft. And even like you go up here on the post, and the post almost looks like it's kind of blurry. And again, I think it's just poor form at this point. Like I've focused on this guy, zoom in, and it's just not that sharp. It looks like it's kind of blurry. it kind of looks like shake. And so I did speed up the shutter a little bit to try to compensate. I also tried to do a tracking shot on this helicopter, and one of these actually came out like halfway decent. I think it's this one, where it's like, it's okay. Like it's mostly in focus, and it does look like we've kind of frozen the image here for the most part. So I was like, okay, if I, in the right conditions, this can produce a good image. But yeah, the more I was shooting, the more I was just kind of like, I don't know, seems soft, seems kind of disappointing on some of these shots. But then when I was doing these macro shots, these bees were like landing on these flowers. And so I was doing these macro shots, and when I super zoomed in, like there's some sharpness there. It's not the sharpest, that's for sure, but there's enough resolution when we're zoomed in at 100% that I was like, okay, yeah, I think this is going to work. So I kept shooting, kept photographing. I don't know why I took a picture of this. Again, we're just testing it out. But this was also worth noting. This is at, where are we at here? This was... It was telling me. Why don't I see it now? Oh, this is at 70 millimeter. So this is the widest of this lens. And we're at f5, which is not stop down. I mean, like the widest this goes is f4. So we're not, maybe 5, 6, or 8, we would be getting the most sharpness. And this is 1/80th of a second at 70. So factoring in the fact that this is a APS-C camera, we really do need to be faster than 1/80th, even with the image stabilization, because yeah, once we zoom in, there's some blur here. It's just not crisp, and that's because we're not holding this steady enough. But I reviewed that and I saw that. So then I shot it at 125th of a second, which is maybe still a little bit slow for this lens, but it was still blurry here. And even like on the fence, you know, depending on where you're looking, it's just like, there's not any part of this that looks any good. Same with a lot of this. When you're zoomed out, looks great. When you zoom in, it's just sort of soft looking. And this one was at 1/400th of a second and 300 millimeters. So that's about 480 mil. So again, this probably was not, it just wasn't enough of a quick enough shutter. But it was like, none of these were any good. This is at 800th of a second. So this should have been fast enough. And yet it is just still like, once you fully zoom in, it just don't look good. I don't know. You guys tell me. Obviously, you're seeing it in a different view than I am. You're not getting the full resolution. Looks okay zoomed out, but it's once you go in that it just starts not looking so good. So I was feeling kind of bad about this purchase. Same with this door. This one was the one that literally, guys, this one sent me, because it doesn't look that good from the wide view. And when you zoom in, it's just like there's a ghosting effect to it, where it's like you see the door, it's locked in, but there's also just like a little motion blur is what it feels like, just ever so slightly. And we're shooting at 1/800th of a second. So it's like there really shouldn't be, because we have the Canon R7s, IBIS, and we also have in-lens image stabilization. And we're at 84 millimeter. So we should have more than enough shutter speed that this should be really razor sharp, and it's not. So that was a big bummer. So yeah, anyway, there's a bunch of files here. They all look bad. So I was kind of sad. And then I busted out the Candy, which that's my forte. And I started shooting with this lens to see, like, okay, if I have plenty of light, like let's bring in, the studio lights, the flash, everything, and we can light this really well. We'll hold it really stable or tripod mount it. And let's just see, like, compared to my Pentax 645D, which is a unfair comparison, but compared to that lens, which is like so sharp you'll cut your finger, what does this look like? And it is softer ultimately, but I can actually pull up a side-by-side. In general, you know, looking at it, I was like, hey, there is actually, like, where it's in focus, it is pretty sharp. And we're not seeing that motion blur because we have the flash, which is freeze framing this, which is telling me that when I was out in the field shooting and getting these kind of like soft, not blurry, but definitely soft images, that it was a technique problem. Because here we are, and we're actually getting some shots that are halfway decent. So I think this is one Canon R7. This was with the 56 millimeter as sort of a control group to compare against the Canon. And it's sharp. It's good. If you're curious about that lens, definitely not a bad one. This one would have been the 70-300, which again, you know, fairly sharp. I think I was comparing this part right here. So it's in focus. There's no blur. Maybe not the crispest image I've ever seen, but it would work. It would be doable because again, this is at 100%. So if you back that out, it looks fine. But that compared to the Pentax, so I'll show you that here. So we're gonna do, let's see, we're gonna do reference, and I'm gonna put the Canon on the left-hand side or right-hand side here, and I'm gonna grab the the Pentax, and I'm gonna put it on the other side. Now again, these aren't going to be framed up exactly the same, but this should give us a little bit of an idea what that difference looks like. And so I don't know if you guys will be able to see this quite as well. I think we have virtually the same. We are a slight bit more zoomed in terms of the difference. I tried to set it up the same, but you know, I'm doing my best here. So anyway, Pentax 645D with the 120 mil f4 prime macro lens, which is probably one of the sharpest lens I've ever shot with. That is on the left-hand side. It's a medium format sensor, 40 megapixels. And then we have the Canon R7 APS-C size sensor, 32 megapixels. So not really a fair comparison, but that's also not really the point. And that is with the zoom lens here, 70-300 f4 to 5.6 L lens, which is also macro, but it's not really macro. And this is not really the lens you would use for this type of studio setting. I'm aware of that, but I just wanted to compare. And so, yeah, ultimately the image is better on the Pentax. We knew that going in, but the Canon side, other than, I mean, obviously it needs a few like touch-ups here to, you know, kind of more mimic the same, you know, brightness, and we bring that down a bit, probably bring that up just a hair, darken that. We'd have to do a little bit more work here to this one, but you get the picture, literally. The picture. But yeah, it's like resolution wise, they're close, and I would say I was impressed by this. So that gave me hope that this Canon lens was not a bad buy, that it's not going to be as sharp as a Pentax medium format prime lens, but it is pretty close for being an older Canon zoom lens. And so that gave me a bit of hope there. So I took this thing out again. I went to I actually shot a few B-roll things for a video that's coming out next week. But in addition to that, the final kind of test here was to say, okay, in the studio, this is looking decent. It's looking good. It's not having that motion blur I'm seeing. I'm shooting it at a faster shutter. And so the next element of that was kind of bringing us back to this image here, which was to say, okay, I'm going to go out during the No Kings protest, and I want to photograph in this environment that is going to be really, chaotic's probably not the right word because it wasn't chaotic, but from a shooting standpoint, there's just stuff happening, right? And you have no control or influence on any of that. You're just documenting it, right? And so something crazy might happen. You've got to react real quick. So I'm going to take this lens and go into that environment, because when I'm shooting IndyCar, it's going to be, a little bit more structured, granted, but you're still kind of flying by the seat of your pants. And so I want to test, like, how does this work? And now that I know that the lens is not messed up and that it was my own technique, can I adjust my technique to get some shots that are sharp and not blurry? So this was kind of the experience. This was the first shot, again, 70 millimeters, super zoom in at 100%, not really quite fair. And actually, I want to say, because we're at f8, so both the sign and this entire building wall are all in focus, and it's pretty sharp. Like, it's actually, I would say, probably sharper than this Sigma native lens for this camera. So that gave me some hope. And then I have gone ahead and selected some of the winners, but I want to show you, it wasn't all hits. I got a lot of hits, but I also had quite a few images that, once I got home, super zoomed in, said, oof, I must have been lacking in my technique for this shot or that shot. So this was the Paramount Theater. Let me see if I can find a good example of one that, another one that was good. So this was at 300 millimeter, because that was the other consideration. Is the lens weaker at the telephoto end, or is it weaker at the wide end? And maybe when I'm shooting at the wide end or the telephoto end, that's where I'm seeing that issue. So I did the Paramount Theater at 70, looked at it. It's looking good, f8. And then this one is 300 millimeters at 6.3. And I was shooting significantly faster shutter speed. So before, I was shooting like 1/80 to like 1/800, and it wasn't getting the job done. So I wanted to see, okay, if we just do really fast shutter speeds, what can we get? I don't know how that's going to work into the panning motion. When you're photographing motorsport and you need to pan, you're usually doing like 1/30, 1/60, something like that. So I'm going to have to go do some motorsport photography leading up to the IndyCar race just to test that out. But at 300 millimeter, tucking in tight, got the lens, everything's as stable as can be. Then we are getting, once it loads here, actually a pretty sharp image. And this is, again, we're zoomed in at 100% from the image itself, which, by the way, I didn't know this, but look at these features on this woman's face. This is insane. Like, she literally has like Neanderthal caveman like brows that extend way beyond her eyes. I mean, it's just like, I don't know. It seems like overdone. I don't know if that's because it's weird or just like maybe that's something that when you have a statue that's that small on a building that's that big, you have to like over accent the features to make it visible to the people on the ground. Like, I'm guessing that's why, but I mean, some decisions were made here. That's for sure. But interesting statue aside, this is really sharp. So, even down here, maybe not quite as much. I was going to say it was sharp down here too, but it's clearly not. It's very blurry. How are we doing here? Here's good. I mean, the focus point, it was definitely eye detecting her. And so it was putting the focus point right on her eye. So it would make sense that, way down here, it's going to be a bit out of focus because it's just going to be way outside that focus point. But there were some shots here where I think in the beginning I was having some success and I was thinking, hey, this lens is not as bad as I thought. It was a technique thing and I'm successfully now doing the technique. And so because of that, this lens is great and I don't need to worry. And so I think I started to get too comfortable with what I was shooting and I wasn't as focused at really holding, the lens steady, and I wasn't as focused at like shooting multiple shots to make sure at least one is in focus and not, camera shake. And I was thinking, hey, I'm shooting at over 1,000th of a shutter speed per second. And so I think I got a bit lazy with a few shots here where then when I went to review them, they were not as sharp. And I have to find a couple, but like the ones that I was working on, this is 1/1250th of a second. And this is sharp. I mean, it's not bad. It's not, or actually this one's not that sharp, to be honest. Maybe it was one of these other ones. But I will say, and that is a good call out, is like, okay, even if with this lens, you tuck in, you hold tight, and even if you are shooting at a really fast aperture and you shoot multiple shots and you do get one with no camera shake and it's in focus, you do the perfect shot. You're using a good aperture where it's maximizing the sharpness. It's still a bit kind of lacking. It doesn't have that razor crisp image quality that maybe a full frame camera in like the Sony Sphere might have. It looks great when you're zoomed out. It's definitely in focus and there is definitely resolution and sharpness to it, but it's just like you can't punch in and still expect it to be, that sharp, I guess. So that's a little bit disappointing. But otherwise, it does look good. So it's like even on the best shots, they're maybe still not the absolute best. Like with this guy, like he's in focus, but is he crisp? I don't know. And actually, for whatever reason, it's not even popping up on the screen there. Let me see. I hope it hasn't been like that the whole time. For whatever reason, Lightroom does that to me. Okay, we'll go out of window capture. We'll go into display capture. There we go. I think it's because I jumped into one of those modes and then it didn't recognize it anymore. But yeah. So it's like, okay, here we have this dude and it is in focus. I mean, we shot this, go to library mode, 1/800 at 128 mil. So should have been enough, 5.6. But if we jump in here, it's like, he's kind of lacking a little bit, right? It could be sharper. And it looks like, from the back, it's fine. Even on this other one I took of him, it's a little sharper, I would say, on his face, but it's still not, I don't know, still not what I would hope for it to be. So some of these are better than others. Definitely the ones with more direct lighting are a bit, better overall. Like this is this is like the best you're going to get out of this lens. Because what are we at here? We're at 1/1200th of a second. f5.6 at 128 millimeter. Maybe you might get a little more sharpness if this was shot at like 6.3, but I mean, this is pretty close. It's a low ISO, 400 ISO. So, but yeah, I don't know. It looks like it's just missing a hair. Like Sony cameras, I feel like just the color science isn't my favorite, but it is sharper. But this still works. I mean, when you're fully zoomed out, you know, nobody is going to zoom into your photo 100%. So that's the pixel peeping. Michael Talley we've got in here. Wow, it's been a while, Michael. How's it going, man? That's crazy. I remember we went and shot some photos back in the day, and sometimes I think about this, how this was like a perspective change moment. And I was like, oh, Michael, your photos are really great. And I don't know, maybe I guess I asked like, oh, what camera do you use? And then Michael's like, oh, I just use my phone. And I was like, oh, shoot. That's impressive for it just being like a phone. And that made me think a lot later on. It's like, wow, it's you know, we know it's never the camera, right? It's always the photographer. But, you know, some cameras, if you pull out like a 1 megapixel camera, that's going to be kind of hard to get like beautiful images on, in the sense of like high resolution type stuff. But yeah, it's like, oh yeah, you really can. And that made me start looking at like other types of tools for photography. So I was like, wow, well, Michael's killing it with his phone. So then I started to use my phone later for like B-roll in various videos that I do, and photos. And I was like, yeah, I feel like I was underutilizing this tool for just the stereotype of it being a phone. So yeah. That abandoned house in Manor, yes, and I think it's gone. I drive by there sometimes to go to my grandpa's ranch. I always look to see if it's still there, and I'm either missing it every time, or I'm just like not catching it, because maybe they finally bulldozed it. I don't know. I'm on a Fujifilm X-T20 now. Yes, Fujifilm's got some good stuff. I've never shot Fujifilm, but it's undeniable that there's some good equipment there, especially from the color science side. And then we've got Jeffrey here. Jeffrey, welcome. I hope you're doing well, my friend. I'm glad to hear from you. Yeah, I was just looking at you know, anyway, we got this lens. It's a used Canon EF lens from the older EF mount, adapted to the new camera, and I'm reviewing a few photos that we took. Basically, in preparation to use this to photograph IndyCar, and I'm glad that I had done some testing, because my initial testing was terrible, and I realized it was, you know, you gotta tuck in, you gotta hold it tight, you gotta limit any kind of movement. You can't just use it like you do your standard lens, because then even with a fast shutter speed, you've got just enough motion blur, which I will probably say this might not have the best image stabilization, being that it is so old. That's a fair assumption. But yeah, a lot of it was technique. So a lot of these images are like a lot sharper once I started to do that holding technique. Let's see, once this one loads. Yeah, like that's acceptably nice and sharp. So it wasn't the lens, it was the operator who was causing some problems. This one was one, it's either this one or no, it was this one. It was one of my favorites from that day. Let's see, once it loads here. Yeah, not bad. Not bad. I kind of wish I had kept like a Sony camera to compare and just see like, hey, you know, how is the Canon? I remember I did do a comparison with this lens, the Sigma lens on the Canon, and the kit pancake lens on the Sony, and the Sony was still sharper, which was just like mind blowing, because it was like literally their cheapest crappiest lens was still better than this one. But I think color science is far more important. And I think like the ergonomics, the experience, there's so many better features in here that like, even if you don't have that final edge of sharpness, who's really going to notice other than those of us that are pixel peeping our own images. So I think I'm looking forward to it. I will practice the skill, and I'm going to be doing another video. I'll probably do a video on IndyCar and just the experience of photographing that. But this weekend, I'll be going down to a local track and photographing some races as practice for the IndyCar race. And so I'll be bringing this lens. I'll be doing my panning shots, trying to get the cars in focus, the motion blur, the whole shebang. And I'll probably have 90% flop images. But if I can get that 10% that actually look good, then I'll be in good shape. And I'm going to have 2 races on Saturday to photograph to get the practice in. So I'm really looking forward to it. It should be a lot of fun. Unless I get home and I see that every image is absolute trash, and in which case I'm going to be, the fun will be over. What's interesting is after I left the event, I had a show to do. And so I was walking back to the theater to perform, and they started to do this impromptu march, which was not planned per se. And I thought, oh, it'd be so funny to be like, oh, everyone follow me. I like lead them back to the theater and pretend they're all coming to my show. And then they ended up walking to the theater. The route they took brought them to the theater. And all the staff at the theater were out like seeing everyone go by. And I just walked up and I was like, hey, I told them they could all have comps for the show. And that was my dad joke of that day. So... but yeah, it was funny. It was funny to pretend that I was leading them back to the show. That's good. Ice cold water. Here's an example. I didn't have much time. I liked the light coming in behind this one cop standing totally by himself. So I only took 2 shots and they were both bad. Fundamentally, there's just a lot here that's not good. You can't quite tell. Maybe if he was closer, maybe if I got lower so there's more like backlit on him. But also like when you zoom in, you can just see like the motion shake is in effect. Like he's sharp and in focus, but he's also kind of like I'm shaking it a little bit. So both of these were equally not good, unfortunately. Could have been a cool shot, especially with like the glare coming off the side of these, the building up here where there's kind of like a glowing effect. It makes me feel like a zombie apocalypse thing, to be honest. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the protest. It was hot, but it was worth it. And I was trying to see if there's any other really good photos from the event. I wasn't really thinking quite as creatively as I was just like opportunities to test my skill set with the lens. By the way, appreciate the thumbs up, guys. Thank you so much. Definitely helps out. So yeah, anyway, that was that event. Now I did also have another thing I wanted to look at, and this is not this particular lens. This was the Sigma 56 millimeter 1.4 lens, which is not really like their art series, so it isn't the top notch quality, but I did a little photo shoot, and I think I had another technique flop, which was, this one actually hurt because, you know, I don't shoot with these big lens, so it's a little, there's a piece of me that says, hey, it's okay that, you know, I kind of sucked the first couple times I used it because I don't shoot on those lens. But man, I've done some portraits in my time. So to not nail the portraits at 1,000,000%, definitely was like, oof, might be getting a little rusty here. but yeah, it was like same kind of thing, like testing out this lens, and the images are good. Like the composition on a lot of these are nice. Everybody was great, but I was getting the box on the eyes, but then when I look at the photos, it is in focus like on most people's sideburn. And I was like, oh, I mean, you're never going to be able to see that fully zoomed out, of course. But there were enough shots that were like nailed properly in focus that to me it was just like very evident the shots that weren't. Like on this guy, Nick, when you pull it up, it's like, yeah, boom, we're right on the eye. We've got the, individual eyelashes popping up beautifully. We did it. And I was impressed with the lens. It's like, oh, wow, okay, Canon can produce some good stuff here. But then it was like, I don't even know who all. We have to find a person who was maybe not. This one's nice and sharp. Like, wow, cut yourself. It's so sharp. That's great. But there were some. Of course, now I'm only finding ones that are all like really sharp. Maybe there weren't as many that were not sharp, because this one is still 2. Let's see. Let me see if I can find one. Here's one for sure. Like you can see right along the edge here is where it's sharpest, and then his eye, especially being that we just saw a photo where his eyes were like so sharp. Now, at least in my view on this monitor, you can see it where it's not quite in focus. So it's like I was getting the Canon eye detect locked focus on the eye, and then we go back and look at it. It's like, I'm not on the eye. So the fact that it did focus on the eye in a lot of these cases, it makes me feel like, dang, did I just like lose some skill from not doing portraits for a while? Because I was hand holding, I was moving around. We had a fast enough shutter speed. We had flash. So there wasn't any issue with camera shake or anything like that. But I think maybe what was happening is I was like locking focus and then kind of like recomposing and maybe accidentally kind of like leaning in ever so slightly. It doesn't take much when you're like working with just that short distance between the eye and the sideburn. It doesn't take much to accidentally lean. And I think that's what happened is I just leaned too much in some of these shots, because there's quite a few that are, like this gentleman here, where it's like the situation lent for his eyes to actually still be very reasonably sharp, and this is perfectly acceptable when you are fully zoomed out. Looks great, no complaints. But if you are pixel peeping, you can see like the focus point is a little bit past the eyeball, and some of these it's like much more obvious. And it also felt like it was certain people it was more noticeable. Like I feel like on this one it's even more noticeable that the eyes are a bit softer and those sideburns and ear are quite a bit more in focus. So I don't know. Part of me wonders, like, is there something with Canon, maybe firmware wise, where there's some eye detect issues? Because that stuff pops up sometimes. Like they do a new firmware, Canon, Fuji, Nikon, it doesn't matter. And then it's the autofocus isn't working, at 100%. But this definitely, the fact that it was like always the sideburn and never the nose tells me it was just me pre-locking and then recomposing and accidentally kind of like maybe leaning a little forward and then hitting the shot. So, that happens. We have to relearn sometimes the things that we already once knew. I'm curious if you guys have had that happen. Maybe you'll make me feel better, where you are skilled at something, maybe even something in the photography sphere, and then you haven't done it in a while, or maybe you just let yourself relax too much and get a little too comfy, and then reviewing the files, you go, oh shoot, I messed up something that I normally just like kill every time. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. It has been a while. But otherwise, this shoot was a lot of fun. We got some cool stuff like this dude, Carlos, who brought me in to do this shoot, which kudos to him. He did find this wonderful tiger photo. It's not really a photograph. It's actually like a embroidered, I don't know what you call that. It's like an embroidered textured image, like it was sewn. So maybe it's a knitted painting. It was really, really cool. And then he brought in all these like fake plants, and we had this really beautiful red colored wall that was, I was a little iffy on the texture of the wall, but in hindsight, looking at it now, it's like, ooh, I like that texture. It feels like it's stucco maybe, or whatever that kind of stuff is that they put on the wall. And I think that works really well with the tiger and the leafy plants. So, and then he also had this really great chair. There's just kind of like an older styled chair. So like everything about it was just so much fun. When I saw the setup, I was like, yeah, this is going to be a good shoot. And then we just did some kind of like interesting, very stoic images with everyone in the cast, which was a lot of fun. But yeah. So yeah, that's my endeavors, learning to shoot with this new, old, used, refurbished, maybe 70 to 300 Canon EF lens. I will say, for anyone who does shoot Canon, if you're iffy on using an older EF lens with a little adapter on your RF camera, it actually works surprisingly well. Like, no autofocus issues, image stabilization still works. Like, I'm surprised and impressed by the little adapter, and this thing was like $35, so that's crazy. But yeah, so we're set up. I actually just recently had, because again, this is like the desk that I work at for studio stuff. So above this painting is a mounted backdrop holder, and I put backdrops up there, pull it down, clamp it into this desk. The desk can raise and lower. It's like a standing desk that I was able to get at no cost, which is great. And so then I can set, like, depending on what I'm shooting, I can get that subject closer or further away and have that backdrop. But then the backdrop just pulls right back up, and then we have our beautiful multiple color painting, which is great. So yeah, I did also want to show, although it might be hard to do here in Lightroom. I was going to show some of the different, I just put out a video today on trying to photograph a lighthouse while I was in Florida, and it kept eluding me the proper angle, the right time of day, good weather conditions, all those different things. You know, you'd get one or two right, and then the third or fourth one would be wrong. And so it's like, I don't know, probably 5 days of trying to photograph the lighthouse before I finally got a shot that I was happy with. And so I just put that video out, but it did make me feel good to be a bit persistent with it. The first day that I shot it, I could have just moved on and been like, I didn't get a good shot. And it is just a lighthouse at the end of the day. So it might be a bit goofy how many times I went back to photograph, you know, time and time again. But I felt good at the end. Like, once I finally succeeded and got a shot that I liked, it kind of made the whole process feel worth it in a way. So that's the behind the scenes. But Florida was really cool. The beaches were maybe not the one I thought that they would be. They were like really gritty and full of like billions of seashells, so it was like not the nicest sand to step on. It was like too coarse and not like soft and powdery like I expected Florida beaches to be, but I think it's because I was on the wrong coast. But that aside, I think the funniest thing that happened to me in Florida was that we were going to a bunch of different restaurants and the food wasn't really hitting, unfortunately. And I kept seeing on like every menu, no matter where we went, there was an option for a Cuban sandwich. And I kept thinking like, that's so weird. Why does every restaurant have a Cuban sandwich? Because in Austin, you kind of have to go to like a Cuban restaurant to get a Cuban sandwich. And you can't really do that just at like an Italian restaurant or a seafood restaurant. But in Florida, it was like every restaurant. We were in West Palm Beach. And so I didn't want to, I wanted a Cuban sandwich, but I was like, oh, I'm not going to get a Cuban sandwich at a random restaurant like this. This is kind of weird. And it wasn't until literally the last day that we were there that I was like, wait a minute. This is like almost literally one of the best places to get a Cuban sandwich. There's lots of Cubans here. What am I thinking? That's why there's so many Cuban sandwiches everywhere. It's like, that's a huge part of the culture here. And so I finally ordered one then because I was like, oh, what am I'm like, I don't know. That's like being in Italy and not getting Italian food. I maybe not quite like that because being in Cuba would be the equivalent, but close enough. As close to Cuba as you can get is basically Miami, right? And so I finally got the Cuban sandwich, and it was a random seafood restaurant that had no business offering a Cuban sandwich, and that thing was probably the best Cuban sandwich I have ever had. So another take on perspective is realizing the right perspective to have. Oh, Florida's not a weird place to get a Cuban sandwich. It's one of the best places to get a Cuban sandwich. That's how it goes. What am I up to, though? I have been working on submitting to some galleries and photographing a lot of carnival stuff. There's actually been a couple videos recently on some carnival endeavors that I've been on. And I did reach out to multiple carnival groups and state fairs like the Dallas State Fair or State Fair of Texas, the Houston Rodeo, the Austin Rodeo, the Williamson County Rodeo, which I have shot at before, and submitted some images, said, hey, this is what I want to do, want to come out. Don't need anything from you other than just permission to be there with a tripod shooting images. I've never really had problems photographing at carnivals, but I also am going to carnivals that are nearby, free to enter, and if someone were to turn me away, it would like not be that big of a deal. Versus if you're driving all the way to Houston, driving all the way to Dallas, you kind of want some assurance that they are going to at least let you in. And I mean, I guess if I don't hear back from them, I may still opt to go and just see if I can get in. But it is definitely one of those cases where it's like, if I'm going to drive to Dallas and we're looking at like, at least a 6-hour round trip, I would love to know that I am going to at least get the opportunity to shoot some photos and use the tripod. So I would love to hear back from the fairs. I don't know. Maybe you all have some ideas of the proper way to reach out to an organization to get, I don't know what it'd even be like. It's not really a press pass because I'm not press, but something similar, photographer's pass. Just generally speaking, like permission, basically. So I'm hoping to shoot some more at like a bigger festival or a bigger carnival where the scenery might be a bit more conducive to good photography. But you can only do so much and hope that you hear back. And if you do, great. And if not, there's not much you can do. But I at least got the opportunity to shoot medium format film at a carnival that was outside of an arcade. And then I also got the opportunity to shoot the Canon at a separate carnival that was literally happening that same week. So I had two carnivals simultaneously to have to do, but they all came out great. So it's like I really want to do a state fair. I would love to do another rodeo. They usually bust out a little more of the good rides. You know what I mean? But one of those carnivals did actually bring the heat. Like they really did. I was saying it in the video where a lot of times carnivals, it feels like compared to when I was shooting them in 2016, 2017, 2018, they were bringing like tons of rides. For a while there, post pandemic, it seemed like a lot of the carnivals would come through and they would have like maybe two mainstay rides. Like they would have the Ferris wheel and then like one other good ride. And the rest of it was all like carnival games and food vendors and stuff like that. And so it was getting hard to go to a carnival and actually get good shots of the long exposures, which I'll show you what I'm talking about here for those who don't know. But like these shots, I'm shooting them on film, and it was getting hard to find carnivals that actually were bringing enough rides to make it worth going. And then this two carnivals show up, gosh, probably a month ago now. What do I have this at? This was May 14th. And they brought like tons of rides. Like one of them had the Kamikaze, it had Zero Gravity, it had Wheel of Fire, it had a pirate ship, it had Area 51, or sometimes I think they call it like Alien Invasion. And it still had like two other rides, Ferris Wheel, Hurricane was another one, and then the last one, I cannot think of the name of it, but it's a good one. It's a good one to photograph. So it was like too many rides. I actually could not photograph them all, which was a bummer. But you know, if you can get to a state fair, they have oftentimes way more rides. And so realistically, you need to go more than one day anyway, and ideally go on the slower day because they're going to be more crowded events. Where was the one that I had? This one was like a really good one where the timing of this was incredibly challenging, because in order to get this shot where you really don't have too many people in your way obstructing the view, which a few people is nice, sometimes a lot of people is nice, but to get so few people, you have to go on like a Monday. But because you're going on a Monday and there's few people, that means they're not actually running the rides as frequent. There's long stretches where you're waiting for someone to get on the ride. And in addition to that, you need to visually watch the ride go at least one time before you take a shot, because you need to see how big is the ride going to go? Where's it all going to move? I want to frame it up so that like it's not going to like start spinning and then rise up and go out of the frame, because I didn't know it was going to do that. So it's like you got to watch the ride through the viewfinder, make sure it's not going to do anything weird where you're going to lose part of the image, and also at the same time make a bit of a mental note at what stages you might want to fire off a long exposure so that you can get certain patterns or certain shapes. And that's just for one ride. To do that for 3 separate rides in one shot, this is not a composition or a composite, I should say. This is literally one shot. In order to do that, you got to wait. I think I waited like 45 minutes to get a shot where all 3 rides were going at the same time. And I almost gave up because it was like, I'm waiting too long. And at the same time too, I did have the back like of this, I think this was like basketball or something. And so it was like, oh, it's not a great shot anyway. But with the flag in here, you got the 3 rides going. It's like, I'm going to take it and we'll see what we get. But I was really happy with this because I don't think I've ever been able to get 3 rides moving at the same time on a slow night on film. We have Friss in here. Apologies if I'm not saying that correctly. But you said, hey, I just got the S5 2X by Fuji. Never used anything but Sony before. What do you think of the 2X or just the 2? Let me pull this up. I'm terrible at memorizing model numbers. So let's see. Fujifilm S5 2X. What do we have here? Or is it the Panasonic S5 2X? Or does Fujifilm also have that? No, I guess it's Panasonic. Maybe I read that wrong. Oh, Lumix. Where did I get? Oh, you're okay. I thought I was like, am I having a stroke over here? Yeah, so this is like, this is probably like the newest one, right? Or a fairly new one. I will say one thing I like about Panasonic is I like the boxy look. Totally unrelated, obviously, to the image quality, to the camera in general. And Jesus, we have so many pop-ups here on the screen. But yeah, just like the boxy look of these. Can we zoom in? Look at that. Sharp edges. I love the sharp edges. You know, like Canon, it's so like rounded, and I don't know. It looks kind of boring to me. But yeah, I just love the boxy look of Panasonic stuff. And they did also, I think this one maybe has it. Does this have maybe not, the double hinge fully articulating like new thing that a lot of brands are doing? I love that. And they're like one of the first brands to do that, I think, with the Panasonic GH6, I want to say. And I hope that comes to literally every camera. But yeah, I don't know a ton about this particular camera other than I believe it's one of the full frame ones. And, you know, my understanding is they are really solid in terms of the camera itself, which, like, this type of camera has kind of like everything I would want in a camera, because my 2 big things are, like, I want a good image quality, which that, you know, just kind of comes down to, like, you got to shoot it and see what it can do and have a good lens for it. But I also want to have good video features, which this one is doing, like 6K 10-bit, 4K 422 10-bit at 60p. That's great. Like, that's what you want. Image stay in the body. Yeah, I don't think there's too many complaints on these particular cameras. Like, they're solid. Panasonic, I guess, are all the Panasonic ones called Lumix, or are there other non-Lumix Panasonic cameras? I'm not sure. I figured 10-bit video is great. Yeah, 10-bit's awesome. It does take a bit of a learning curve, but the result, once you nail understanding how to expose for 10-bit, and then even just doing light color grading, like, you don't have to become a color grading expert, the most basic of things, and you can produce just such a wonderful image with 10-bit. Like, my Canon doesn't even have as good a 10-bit as this does, at least on the spec sheet. I was looking at the A7C II from Sony, but that one was more expensive than this, and just all around seems better. Yeah, did you say, or did I make it up in my head that you said you moved from Sony? Oh, never used anything. Oh, yeah, never used anything but Sony before. Same, like, I was Canon, moved over to Sony, shot Sony for 6 to 10 years, somewhere in there, and then moved back to Canon because the biggest gripe I had with Sony was just the color science at least in what I saw, was just not good. Sony was great for like maximum sharpness. So far, my Canon has not been able to produce an image as sharp as even like a budget Sony. So that's a little bit of a bummer, but that is only when you're like hyper zoomed in pixel peeping. When you're just like not zoomed in, they look the same. But the color science is dramatically better. And I think that's something that also like Fujifilm, Panasonic, maybe Olympus, that's kind of up in the air. Some people may disagree with Olympus, but yeah, the color science is better. And to me, it's like, if I'm going to gain something better, like color science, I'm fine losing a slight perception of sharpness, because it is still going to look in focus and fine when you're not, pixel peeping. So, yeah, I'd be interested to know. It sounds like you maybe don't have it yet. It's on the way, or do you already have it? Because I would be interested to know, as you start to photograph with it, shoot with it, what your experience is as far as positives and weaknesses. Because that's the thing too, is like, I've said this before on this channel, we can look at spec sheets all day long, and at the end of the day, we're going to know very little about what the camera actually is going to do, because we got to actually sit down, shoot with it, and see what that image looks like, what the colors look like, the sharpness, the way that it does all the things that it does, and the experience of actually shooting it, because it's no good if you don't like shooting it. Yeah, it's on the way, and I love Blackmagic color science, but this is as close to it, but more of a usable camera. Yeah, definitely. Blackmagic has a wonderful, wonderful color science. May even be kind of one of the better color sciences, so to speak. And it definitely produces amazing images. I've seen and used Blackmagic before on a few shoots, and then I've seen other people shoot with Blackmagic, and I've been like, dang, that looks awesome. But to your point, yeah, there's basically no autofocus. It's like, technically there is autofocus in the camera. Is it usable? No. So yeah, this is probably going to be a significantly more usable, camera than something like that. I just know what they look like. I love the box camera, BHG1, and the Blackmagic cameras. The colors are just different. Yeah. I think like the big ones in terms of color science are probably, like, Fujifilm's always known for having good color science. I've not really shot Fujifilm, so I can't comment on that too much. The times where I tested one out wasn't in the right environment, so it's not fair to say. But Canon definitely has some good color science. Blackmagic, from what I've seen. Nikon maybe even a little bit, depending on the model. Sony, no. I will say, Olympus, Olympus model numbers will ruin your mind. The Olympus eVolt E500. Now that camera, for being as old as it is, has some of the most just awesome color science right out of camera in the raw file, and it's just ready to go. And that one's a fun one to shoot. If it was a more modern camera, and it could actually shoot video, it might be even like a camera you could seriously use for everything. But yeah, that was great back then. Rip to Olympus. I think OM System, I think they're not doing so great. Folks. I need to take a look at Olympus. Never seen anything about them. Yeah, I think, and no offense to Olympus shooters, because I am one. I have 2 Olympus cameras, and I do really love both of those cameras. But I think OM System is not cooking right now. Appreciate the likes, guys. I'm like way behind on like looking at stuff like that, but I do appreciate the thumbs up. Yeah, I think, Olympus had some really great stuff. But once it moved over to OM system, like every release that comes out from OM system feels like a firmware update. And they just put out that I think it was today, right? OM5 Mark II. And I pulled it up because I don't know, just curious. I have an aging OMD EM10 Mark III. So I'm always curious, are they going to put something out that maybe could be a replacement for that? And it's like, dang, every person reviewing this camera, it seems like they're trying to like basically say, yeah, there's almost no new features here, but the idea of this camera is still good. And so maybe it's still worth buying. And it's like, no. Did they improve it or not? But yeah, anyway, that's how it goes. It's still a great system if you're doing like bird photography. I think probably OM system is one of the leading systems for, birding, I guess is what they call it, for sure. But they're really kind of like backing themselves into a corner where they're like, hey, instead of being just like an all-around brand, we're literally just going to be for someone who's hiking and taking pictures of birds. And that's it. We're literally not even going to try anymore for anything else. And that's such a disappointment because I don't know. I feel like Olympus could have been bigger, but just because you could be bigger doesn't mean you will be bigger. Sometimes that happens. Unforeseen situations, products that they put money into that didn't work out, maybe some bad investments, whatever it may be. Obviously, Olympus spun off the brand, so it's not like it was killing it for them. They had to spin it off and sell it to a separate brand. So yeah, that's not usually a good sign, but I still stand by. I made a video a while back that got some hate on it a little bit, at least in my memory it did. But it was me saying Olympus or OM system should just go and do like a medium format camera. And everyone was like, that's a terrible idea. That would totally flop. And they're right. It probably would. But man, I don't know. I just would love to see them not just become only for birding photography on a budget, which is what it feels like they are now. I see that with Sony too. The FX2 was a letdown. Yeah, that's a great example. That's a great Sony example. Because Sony, they're in a better position than OM system for sure. But Sony's also like known for having way too many camera options. And it does feel like this is not the first time this has happened, but it's the first time that like the sales side has reflected it. Because honestly, like the Sony A7C, the original one, was like, what is this? It's a compact, like that's what the C stands for, A7 compact. It's basically an A7 Mark III, but you just chopped off like the top viewfinder. And the problem is that the compact component makes no sense. Granted, that might fit into like a gimbal or something of that nature, obviously much better. But like the compact nature of Sony is a joke in a way because the lens are so huge. And that is a direct result of the fact that their mount, it was designed for APS-C. It wasn't ever designed with full frame in mind. The next series, that was all APS-C. But then they decided to cram the full frame sensor in there. And granted, they still make good cameras. But it's like, well, now the lens all have to have like a built-in adapter. That's why they all go big and then they all scrunch down small. That's like the adapter that's just like built in. They're not the only brand to do that. As much as I like Canon, Canon's doing the same crap. Like Canon literally has taken some EF lens, put a brand new shiny like case on it, and then just built in an adapter to it. And it's like, oh my God, literally this is the same camera, same stabilization, same crappy autofocus, or same lens, I should say. And I'm thinking specifically of that like super budget, what is it, like the 75 to 300? It's like the worst lens they ever made for EF, and it's the cheapest. It's like $50, which is That's already a red flag. It's like, oh, turn away, turn away. Um, but yeah, they literally just slapped an adapter on the back and put like a nice shiny new RF like, plastic case around it. It's like it's literally the same lens, if not maybe potentially worse. But yeah, anyway, that's kind of Sony's situation. It's like all the lens have to be bigger to compensate for the fact that the physical like mount itself is designed for APS-C. Um, and that's a tangent that I just went down. But yeah, the FX2 also the same kind of thing. Is like the A7C is just an A7 in a, I guess, slightly more compact body that makes no sense. We already covered that. But then the FX2, it's like, what is this? There's nothing new here aside from like a couple minor firmware changes, but it's basically, what was it, like the A7 IV sensor in a, cinema camera body. It's like, oh, not a good call. Not a good call for a brand that already offers too many options. It's like, Sony, you make too many cameras. If you could just pull back on like 2 or 3 models and focus the effort, instead of making more models, just do more firmware updates, then your cameras would be, the system would be in much better shape, because Sony already has like the best lens lineup, I think, of any brand at this moment. And it's just because they were the first to really do all in on mirrorless. So they've just had more time. But like when you add in all the third party stuff, that's like hundreds of lens options, which is great. But then the firmware is lacking and people get pissed about that. And that was always a pain point when I shot Sony. So it's like, just make 2 less cameras a year. And then you don't have to do this like scraping. They're like really scraping the bottom of the barrel. It's like, you don't have to do that. Nobody's making you do that. Just don't really, when you're hitting the bottom of the barrel, stop, put down the scraper, take your scraper, put it down, and then do a firmware update instead, and you'd be in much better shape. But yeah, Sony, obviously, much better shape. They can afford to do that a little more than OM System. I think OM System is not doing it because they don't want to like invest in new technology for their cameras, or they think that they can pass off these like minor adjustments to their system. I think OM System is doing these kind of garbage releases because they literally don't have the money, staff, and resources to actually like make significant R&D, right? They don't have the research and development infrastructure to like actually improve the cameras. Because what was it, like the OM5 doesn't even have 10-bit video? It's like it's only 8-bit or something, and it's literally the same 8-bit from the OM1 that's like super soft and doesn't like have much definition to the video footage. It's like obviously not intended to be a video camera. But yeah. And of course, we have this camera just loves to disconnect. I don't know what it is. It actually worked pretty well here for a minute. And this is a Sony camera, so what are we gonna do? We may have to say goodbye to old Sony if it's gonna never work on stream. Let me check back here. I don't know. It could also be, it'll come back on here in a second. It could also be the cam link. It seems like this cam link that I've got just does not, it doesn't work when I connect it to OBS. And I don't know why that is. It seems like it should, but works fine in Zoom, but then it doesn't do well in OBS. Let's see. Come on, camera. Everyone pour one out for this camera. Come on. Here we go. I'm going to pull out the battery, put it back in. Maybe that'll do it. Let's see. Come on. Now, one thing I will say, I'm going to give this camera a second to respond better here, but in the meantime, I'll just pull that out of the way so we can enjoy the photo. But yeah, so this particular photo shot on the Mamiya 645 Pro. Want to say this was Kodak Portra 400, and this was probably about an 8-second exposure, 6 to 8-second exposure, and the lens would have been the 80 mil, Mamiya's 80 mil f4. It's a macro lens, so it actually is sharpest close up, and the more you throw that focus to infinity, it's not, that's a weaker part of the lens. So you would think it wouldn't be quite as ideal for this particular environment because we're not shooting macro, we're shooting, really wide out. But it actually worked really well. So that was one that was really good. This other one, what's interesting is sometimes you go into the carnival and you're thinking, okay, we want to go for the crazy rides. We want to go for rides that have like the most movement. You know, some of these rides will do 3-4 different movements as they run through the course of the ride. And so you can get several different shots where it looks like you're photographing totally different rides, but you're actually doing the same one. So sometimes when we go to a ride like this, where we're really only going to have a single movement, which is just rotation, you're like, we're probably not going to get anything good here. It's going to be too simple. But then when I photographed it, it's like, this actually looked pretty cool. And I photographed it twice here, and we got two very different, distinct kind of looks to the image itself. But I love the, almost simplicity of that shot. But then the other version of it, which is like almost more, sprinkles of pixels, was really, really interesting. So the combination between these and just only being literally one shot, between them. Let me put up this other one here. It's like that difference in just, 6 seconds of time. Because while we do have sort of a difference in terms of the timing of it, the other difference is that the fact that the lights are they're blinking and they're going. And so in one shot, the lights might be a bit more constant. The next shot, they're doing significant more kind of like blinking or pulsing. And so by shooting multiple shots, same ride, you can get a different experience or a different vibe from the way that those lights look. I mean, even I think in some of these other ones where maybe we'll open this up to be filters off, we can look at a few that I maybe didn't pick on. So like here's the one that we did go with, and then maybe here's one that we didn't. It's like, okay, we're probably about the same on this guy. This wants to do something different, which, this one was actually a pretty simple ride. So it's only going to really do the one look, which is the one that we're getting here. But depending on when you hit it, as far as the timing of your exposure, it's like you do get a little bit different look. You're kind of getting this swirl up. It's almost like a more ununiform tornado effect versus the one here that is, much more uniform. And I don't know, it's just interesting to me how you can photograph these rides a few different times and literally every single shot is going to be different than the previous one. I don't know too many other situations in which you can get, that kind of look or that kind of experience in photography. So I liked that. And then we can actually jump back. So that was all shot on film, which was like kind of a mix of Kodak Gold 200 and Kodak Portra 400. But if I scroll back through here, I can find, we also did another carnival that same week that we shot with the Canon. I can't tell you what lens we used. And let's see, actually we'll probably go filters on for this one, so we could just go for the ones that look good. Obviously, shooting digital, we grabbed a few extra shots than we would. But here's another example, actually. And this one isn't even going to be a difference in pattern. It's more a difference in the color that you're getting, right? And so it's like just by shooting a ride multiple times, you get a little bit different colors at different stages. And now I'm looking at these, I don't remember even which one exactly I went with, but I want to say it was this one here on the right, because you just have this nice smooth transition from one color to another, and it almost looks like it's intentional that way. This other one doesn't look bad, and in fact, you know, the colors are even maybe a little bit more kind of popping to me. I like them, but they're much harsher transitions, and that's just because at the moment that this shot was taken, the ride is in a different transitionary period. So you're also seeing, you know, the start stop of whatever this next transition is for the light show, but you don't really have that on this version. So that means that when we shot this one, it was, you know, right in the middle of whatever, you know, particular light show moment that it was doing. So we don't really have any transitionary points. Kind of looks like, you know, rings of a planet almost when you hyper zoom in like that, which that might be a fun, like, sort of lesson learn, where it's like, I love this shot, but next time I encounter this ride, it might be interesting to, you know, purposely jump in, do a super tight crop, you know, in camera with the lens, bring a nice long telephoto lens, and purposely shoot something like this, where all you get informationally is this. You have no further context about the rest of the ride. Could be fun to do that next time. This was the Kamikaze, so maybe next time I see Kamikaze, I'll try to do that. But the other kind of cool thing that ended up transpiring with this particular shoot was that the night that I first went to this carnival, I always go on a Monday night because I want as little people as possible. I don't want any shots where people are like standing in the way. I just want unobstructed views of the rides. And so I went on a Monday and it was closed. I think they thought it was going to rain, so they didn't actually open the carnival, but it didn't rain. And so then it was like a Thursday that I ended up going back when it was open. And I just saw another like on there. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. But yeah, I ended up having to go back on a Thursday, and it is pretty busy on a Thursday, and it's not as bad as maybe a Saturday, but it was bad enough. And so I did get this shot with this woman watching her kid on the ride, and I thought that was cool. Where it's like, okay, I don't mind that. I like that. But I did also make sure to do a few shots where we you know, basically didn't have people kind of getting in the way. So it was like timing the shot so that both of these rides are going at the same time, but then also trying to be situationally aware to see where is everyone in terms of, are there any people that are about to walk through this shot? And I'm doing a 6 to 8 second exposure. So, you know, if someone's going to walk through, it's going to be, you know, it's going to have to be a fast pace to not show up in this image. But you can do it. So even though we had so many people, we position this so we don't see anyone buying the armbands because we're blocking it with this, food vendor. And then we're keeping it fairly tight on this shot so we're not seeing the families that are standing kind of off to the side over here. And then we're waiting to make sure nobody's about to walk through, hitting that 6-8 second exposure, and then we're getting a shot where it looks like there's nobody there. We did a few wider ones. I'll have to try to find where we kind of just, I camped out here for probably an hour just shooting off images until I got the ones I was kind of looking for. Same with a few of these other rides. And I think we had one, try to see, they're all kind of mixed together. Yeah, we did a few with the ND filter where we were doing during the day while it was still pretty bright out, doing a long exposure just with the ND filter. But I gotta see, I think it's this one. Yeah, so this was this was golden hour, honestly. And you just slap on a nice, strong ND filter. And then it was, same thing, kind of waiting for people to not be walking through this area, but also trying to set it up to where we're not necessarily doing the most wide shot where we're going to have a bunch of people who could be in view. Because a lot of times they'll stand in front and watch, their loved ones on the ride. But I actually didn't realize, I was bragging a minute ago about how that other film shot, I was able to get 3 rides going at the same time, which is kind of hard. That's probably the benefit of going on a Thursday is we've got the Ferris wheel up here, we've got the merry-go-round, and we have this other ride, the Orbiter, which are all 3 going at the same time, and that's pretty cool. And then I do kind of like this cloud running through here. But yeah, this was at golden hour, and this was an 8-second exposure. So the ND filter was critical for that kind of shot. Same with this. But that gave us a good opportunity to kind of get the clouds, get a lot of the detail. When it gets darker, you can get some good looks, but you do start to lose some of the detail because you're not getting any light on them. Whereas when you shoot with an ND filter at golden hour or twilight, then you do get more of that detail because the sun is still actually out, which plenty of shadow detail. But this one we did have people, and it was okay, I want to test out what does it look to have some people in the shot versus to have no one in the shot. Now I have a strong opinion on this, but I actually would be interested what you all think. Do you prefer to have this shot? And I'm going to try to avoid words that might tip my hat as to which way I'm thinking of it. But yeah, do you prefer a shot where there's no people and you're just getting the rides, or do you like a shot where there is people? Granted, we lost that cloud, but it's because the cloud was moving, so it's kind of outside of our control. But fundamentally, which one is more appealing to you as a viewer? That's kind of interest to me. While you ponder that, I'm going to try to unplug and replug in this camera, see if it'll come back on. I have to see where I'm connected. YouTube just recommended your stream. Hey, that's great. That's awesome. I was actually very low motivation today to even do this stream, so that's nice to know. I like that. Thank you for giving me a nice, I don't know what you would call that, it's not a compliment per se. I guess it could be, but you jazzed me up there, Justin. I appreciate that. Whoa. I'm literally falling trying to troubleshoot this camera. I can't believe this thing just stopped working. I may have to just set up my... I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to set up the Canon camera up here. So the Sony camera may have literally just died, which is insane. And maybe that explains why it's been giving me grief all this time. Are you a fan of exposure bracketing too? The funnel cake shot is a good idea. I literally laughed as I read your laugh, so it sounded like I was reading and saying your laugh, but I was just just laughing. But yeah, I have done some exposure bracketing. It's been a while though since I really, you know, kind of like tried to do anything like that, especially because I don't do it for film. It's just one shot and that's what I got. Sometimes I've done that. I don't think I've ever done that really though for any kind of long exposure. And I wonder how that would work in my mind. I'd have to think about it for a minute to see if it's something, because it could also, you know, if it doesn't work in the traditional sense, it could work in a very creatively interesting sense to employ that. So that might be an interesting one to like go out to the next carnival and test it. No problem. Definitely a compliment. Must be ticking some boxes and keeping people engaged, adding value. I hope so. I certainly try. But I also just do it for the fun of it. And so if it's entertaining and fun for other people, then I absolutely love that. But also I feel like there's, you know, you got to do it for yourself at least. So, okay, I'm disconnecting the Sony camera here. We should have my face back on screen here shortly. Let me just set this down very gently and politely. Put this here. Okay, and then we'll be back and you guys can see my wonderful face. Yeah, I think the big thing for me right now is the carnivals are a lot of fun. No denying that. And if you're ever interested in a carnival, I can tell you guys right now, you can show up as long as you're respectful and you're not being a nuisance. You can bring a tripod, go into the carnival and photograph it, and you will not get any grief from anyone who works at the carnival about what you're doing. I've shot carnivals since 2016 doing these long exposures, and the only comment that anyone has ever made to me is to ask if I'm with the news, which is funny. Like, I get it, but it is funny to me that like someone with the news would be doing long exposures of the rides. But I guess it's like, if that's your metric for, you know, what people do with cameras, then it makes sense that that's what you would think. Let's see if this brought the camera back. Not quite. Let me see. It could be honestly, it could be the capture card, to be honest. Let's see. Although we weren't getting a signal before once the Sony kind of died there, so maybe... Oh, wait. I think we got something. Oh, but it's going to be a it's going to be in 10-bit, so we have to make some adjustments here real quick. 1 second. I love that the time that YouTube recommends the live stream is the time that we're going to have all of the problems. That's how it goes, folks. But luckily I keep Canon log as a quick setting. And then I guess we would have to turn off. And I'm literally doing this like in reverse. I'm looking at my screen, but I'm not looking at the where would that setting even be? I guess it would be maybe here. Do do do. Playback information. Oh, you know what? It's probably like in here. Yeah, I feel like any second now we're gonna see it. But I'm also under pressure, under self pressure. Yeah. Dang it, where is that setting? I guess I can make this easier by pulling this off of the... Take a quick look here. We should have an option to turn off this setting. There we go. Oh, wait, that's HDMR. HDR output. We need HDMI. I keep finding almost the exact thing I want, but it's not it. They need like the emergency, put it into webcam mode, emergency. This is crazy. This could also be like a thing to say about camera menu systems. Like, we still need to make some improvements here. Who has the worst menu system? I would have said Sony until just now when I'm trying to do something on a stream, and now I want to say Canon, but I feel like somebody has an even worse one than Sony. I've literally gone through oh my god. I've gone through this menu system 3 times, and I know I've done it before where I've turned off the display for the HDMI out for the Canon R7, but I am not seeing the option, and it's devastating to me right now. Oh my goodness. My goodness, my goodness. Or they could put AI on a camera and you could be able to say, hey, turn off this feature, and then it could like just figure out how to do it for you. That could be cool. I'm sure they would find a way to make it terrible, but just the idea of it could be interesting. Screen, viewfinder, HDMI resolution, but that's not it. Does anyone know? Probably not. Oh gosh, that's so frustrating. I'm literally just going to, I'm going to Google it because I can't with this right now. I'm literally just going to type in how to turn off information output on HDMI Canon R7, and it's probably not going to tell me how to do it. Clean HDMI output. Information display. Maybe that's what I should have been looking for, is the word information display. Or wait a minute. Or committed now. We're testing it. Maybe I could. But now it doesn't even want to show up here. There we go. It's too big. Wow, it's giant. This thing's all over the place. Maybe if I just set info. Oh, but it still has this auto. There we go. Well, that'll at least do it. Okay. I'm so massive. Look at me. I'm huge. Let's see if we can brighten this up a bit. Whoop. There we go. The literal Sony camera died. That's crazy. But we succeeded anyway. We brought it back. So this other Sony camera, I've had it for years. This was the original live stream camera. And it's been, I mean, honestly, it's been a decent little camera. It's the Sony, what is this? A5100? Yeah, A5100 with a little Mikey lens, manual focus lens. And we've had it for years, using it for Zoom calls for work and live stream as the little live stream camera. But I think it just literally died today. That is sad. RIP. I hope not. But if it did, that'll be the end of that one. But we're back. And now we can move on. Now we can put that aside. Wonderful to have the moment that you have YouTube promote your stream. That's when your technical issues really are most welcome. So, but yeah, anyway. So yeah, I'm always curious though. Let me shrink this down a little bit more here. I'm always curious what people think about the people in the shot. Because for me, I think I prefer shots like this where you don't see anyone in it at all. It's like it's almost a lack of people, like a liminal space in a way. But we know that there's people there because the rides are going. And so we sort of have like everything is normal and we have the rides, things are moving, there's lights, life is happening, but yet there's no people. So it's like we're removing almost the most important piece from the image. And then what's left? It's like, you know, I don't know. I love doing that. But I've started to lately also photograph with people and kind of see how I feel, you know, differently. Now, normally I like to photograph with people, just not when I'm doing the long exposures. That's when I like to kind of remove everyone. So I don't know. It'd be interesting to know what you guys think in terms of what your preference is, because that would be interesting to know. So anyway, but those shots were fun to do. Again, kind of without any nighttime. It was all ND type filter. And then we had a few folks here, some guys that were hanging out. This one's also kind of cool. Like just the fact that there's, you know, basically this one dude that's visible when this isn't hyper zoomed in. Like you can kind of see these other people, but when you're zoomed out, it's like, it almost just looks like there's this whole carnival happening and then just one guy who's standing there hanging out. And I think the fact that this table is here and totally empty really helps drive that home, which is funny to me. But anyway, but yeah, I think this was a lot kind of playing around with the Canon R7, since most of the time when I'm shooting these, I'm doing it on film. I don't often go out and have the opportunity to shoot the image and then also be able to see in real time what that image actually looks like. So it was an interesting change of pace to be able to shoot and also see the image as I was shooting it. And I won't say that helped or hurt me in any way. It was just interesting, like not having to wait, to go back, develop the film, scan it in, and then look at it that way. But similar to that guy before, this was kind of another one where it was like, it's kind of interesting to have this one lady who's here watching, and then for the most part, there's no other people. But it wasn't all success. I did take a stab at shooting the orbiter, which I've shot before, and this ride is a blast to photograph most of the time. On this night, it was not fun at all. I wasn't getting any good shots, and it was probably one of the last rides, if not the last ride I shot, so I was pretty, kind of just done at that point. But yeah, it's like I was getting a lot of this, which depending on your lens, depending on your settings, you can kind of avoid having. But for whatever reason, I just could not set up a shot that looked good. And maybe this was like the best one that I got, which was just like a straight on orbiter type shot. But I don't know. Some of the ones I've done in the past, I think I have a few versions of the orbiter that are on my Instagram I probably shot on film, but they're from like a year ago, and it just looks so much better in my opinion. I like just about scarcity. It accentuates the scene. Yeah, I think so. I think that's an element that makes it kind of fun. And, there's so many people and so many things. So it's like maybe pulling that out, like removing that subject can be interesting. I think, was there one other ride here that night? That's the Kamikaze. That's what it looks like. I think this was just kind of like a throwaway shot that I did as I was making my last lap through the carnival. But yeah, I think that was it for the long exposures. It is also interesting to photograph these rides before you do the long exposure, because it does give you a chance while there's still daylight to get a shot, but also to see where the best placement's going to be for the camera and how wide or tight you can get for what you're trying to do. And then that way, once the sun does set, you're not wasting any time at all. Or if you're using an ND filter as you're getting close to that sunset, you're not wasting any time. You can just say, okay, I already know where to shoot. I know how to frame this up. Boom, boom, boom. I can knock it out. Less of a problem for this particular carnival because it was like a Thursday night that I went back. So there were plenty of people to keep the rides moving. But again, on a slow night, like a Monday, which is my sort of premium spot to do, that's where it can be, 45-minute wait just to see the ride go one time. Now this one was fun because I love this dude who is like, it felt like looking into like the 90s or like the 70s or something. Especially because I'm in Austin. I think this is probably the case like pretty much anywhere in the US and likely in a lot of other countries too, where like smoking a cigarette is kind of, it's not a popular thing to do as much anymore, but you definitely can't do it like indoors anymore. And if you're in like a certain type of environment, you usually have to do it like 15 feet away from wherever that environment is. But that apparently does not apply at the carnival, because this guy was just like ripping on cigarettes the whole time. Like I was watching this ride go, and as soon as he would finish one, boom, he was lighting up another. And I just loved it because it gave it such an atmosphere. Like you see that smoke coming off there, and he's like paying way more attention to his cigarette than he is the ride that's happening that he's in control of. And I just thought that was great. Like that was long exposure aside, probably my favorite shot from that particular carnival is just capturing this dude literally in a very honest moment for himself. But I actually didn't notice at the time that I shot this. It wasn't until I actually went back and started to review it. And then I was like, oh, wait, is he smoking a cigarette in this thing? Like as the ride's going? And then so I went back over there and sure enough, he was smoking. And then I just kind of like watched the ride, watched him, and it was like, he's literally chain smoking right now. He's having a great time. But yeah, that was funny. I love that. Yeah, I think that's it for the carnival, which was a good time. It was a good time. And then what else do we have here? I think the other big one that I was going to mention, I think it was this one. So I went to Florida. That's a whole nother thing we talked about. But there was an art gallery there, and they had a photography section, which is so rare at like a real art gallery. It's all paintings. It's all sculptures. It's all like, modern art or abstract art. Love it all. But they very rarely have like any significant photography to any kind of like large museum, unless it's like a dedicated museum for photography. So I saw that they had a section. I was like, I gotta go check this out. And it was worth it, because the other thing about photography in an art form in a museum is it's always really interesting to know, like, from an art gallery perspective or from an art perspective, what in photography would be considered art. Like, are we doing street photography? Are we doing portraits? Is it something super abstract? And then how do they actually facilitate and represent that? So anyway, went to this section, and it was fascinating. This image in particular, I cannot do justice here, but in person, there was no light source in front of or behind or anything, but the image really truly felt like it was glowing. Like as I looked at the image, I was like, I feel like there's a light source. And I was trying to see, is there like a light shining on this? Is there something behind here? And it's just like the way that it's shot, the medium that it's on, it just had like a way of making you feel that it was glowing, even though it actually wasn't. So this image is terrible. It doesn't reflect that well. But I thought that was so cool in practice. And like, this is a very interesting image in of itself. Like, my photo here sucks, but all the little dots on here makes me really wonder, like, how, in what way did they take this photo? Like, how did they create all these little tiny dots? Is this done in camera? Is this, to some extent edited, and in what way? But I know from shooting on the Olympus Olympus E-Volt E500 that, like, depending on the light and if you're shooting studio and you've got flash and you're hitting it at a certain angle, you can make your subject have a bit of a glowing effect. And so I don't doubt that could be achieved in camera, but I would certainly wonder about all these little dots, how they were able to achieve that. There was also this one, which I have to remember exactly, but it was like purposefully distorted portraits that this artist had done. And it was like shot on film, like 1920s, 1940s, something like that. It might say in here. Oh yeah, 1940. Yep. And I just thought this was so cool. Like, this is an interesting take, someone doing this in the 1940s. To some extent, it makes me wonder, like, not every photographer, but for myself, do we sometimes forget about things like this, and we get so wrapped up in, putting together the perfect exposure and the perfect sharpness, and, it's got to be in focus, and I got to have the right amount of background blur, and like, we get caught up so much in that. Do we forget to think creatively? This is not intended to be necessarily something that we answer, right? But just when I look at something like this shot in the 1940s, it's like you almost have an aha moment of like, wait, why have I never thought to do something like that? And I would consider myself a creative person, but like someone in the 1940s did this, probably not the first person to do it either. But then you don't see a lot of that today. And when you do see it, it's not always executed, quite so well. So I don't know. But I thought that was like a good eye-opening experience of like, dang, maybe to some extent we also need to reflect back on what other photographers have done. And are we in an environment in today's world where we've allowed kind of like marketing to really tell us what we should be thinking about in terms of how we're doing photographs? And the marketing is like, put together a perfect photo. You need this camera to make the perfect photo. And it's like, but do I really even need an image to be that sharp or to have good bokeh if I were to do something creative like this and like create images that are purposefully distorted or have shake or have, these type of things in there. So I don't know. I see Tape Collector jumped in here. Much love, dude. New video is great. Hey, I appreciate it. Yeah, it was a fun one to do, and it took a lot of time to get the right shot, but I think the message of the video was worth all the multiple days of trying to photograph a lighthouse. So I appreciate that. You'll love this too, that today, I guess, YouTube was like, oh, we'll promote the live stream. And this was like the day I had the lowest energy. I almost didn't even do the live stream, but also I've had so many technical issues with the camera. And so it's like, oh, that's wonderful. Like the worst live stream that I've done is the one that YouTube's going to promote. Like, of course, that's how it always happens. The best live stream you do, it's going to get buried. The worst one you do, actually, we're going to promote this and judge your account based on how it does. Like, sucks so bad. But hey, what can you do? You live and you learn. But yeah, the only other one I had on here from this gallery that actually had photographs was this. And again, this is like maybe not reflective of how good it looked in person. But what's interesting is I liked this a lot. Like I sat down, they had a bench in front of it. I sat down and I just looked at every single one of these individual images and was really soaking it in, thinking like, oh, this is so creative. And again, kind of a case of like, we're throwing out the idea of producing an image that's perfectly exposed, perfectly sharp, etc. And we're embracing the chaos here. And there is like also a structure to this as much as there is a chaos. But I was admiring that. And then controversially, I got up and I was just like, oh, let me read, like now that I've sort of soaked it in and taken my own meaning for this. Again, appreciate the likes, guys. Thank you so much. Now that I've soaked in, what my interpretation is, I do want to read the plaque and see what the artist was intending. And so I read this, and I then kind of started to have an uncertainty as to whether I still liked the art or not. And I'll summarize this here for you, but feel free to read it. This first part is the part that's in English. And basically, it's someone who has not actually gone out and photographed this image and done so in a like intentional way, but rather went in and found images online that other people had taken and then just took their iPhone and put a like, fun film presets type app on, and then photographed like a bunch of different shots of this landscape that other people had done, but through their kind of like purposefully shitty iPhone app, and then, printed, framed them, and put it all together. And then it's like, okay, this is maybe like a commentary on like appropriating images or something. I don't know. But yeah, part of me was like, oh, I don't know if I like this anymore, because I can understand that there might be a little bit of a meaning there, or, something that you're going for. Maybe you're taking these like perfectly exposed shots that other people have done and purposely framing them in a new way. But the idea that like, oh, you didn't actually like go out and shoot any of this, you just shot them all on your phone. Did you credit the original photographers? Like, did you get their permission? Did you credit them in any way? Or are you just acknowledging that like, hey, I did take these, but I'm not giving any credit or like, I don't know, that made me kind of think, I don't know if I like that, because I do like how it all looks and it's interesting. But it also feels kind of like, I don't know, cheaty or thefty, or I don't know. Maybe you guys have a different opinion. But it was a cool one. But that's also the fun about going to a museum and seeing the photography stuff at a museum, is you can actually have that debate. You can soak in the art, and then you can start to kind of critique it in your own way and say like, ooh, is this interesting to me or not? And based on what I now know about this art, do I still like it or not? Tape Collector said, yeah, the stream was in my recommended video bar. Interesting. Well, I definitely wish it had been a better one, folks. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about the camera issues. I think this camera literally died because it worked flawless for so long, and then it did start to have some issues, and then tonight it just turned off, and so far it has not turned back on. But that also could be that maybe it was something to do with the cam link, which I'm still using, but it seems like sometimes that has problems with OBS. I don't know. It is what it is. But yeah. So I don't know. I don't know about all the art and the things that come with the territory of critiquing someone else's art when you yourself are not necessarily an artist. So yeah. But I think it's interesting, and I do wish that more places would do photography as part of a museum, even if it's just a small section. Like, it doesn't have to be, some massive section where you're devoting all this time to photography, but not just photography. I would also love to see video in a gallery. Like, video has been around long enough at this point. If we're including photos and we're including sculptures and we're including, paintings that are from the 1960s, 1970s, why wouldn't we include video from the 1920s, the 1930s, the 1950s, whatever it may be? Because I think, it'd be interesting to include something like that. And then when you talk about video, like, what then constitutes, art that could be in a museum versus art that would just be for commercial consumption, right? We're probably not going to go into a museum and see Jurassic Park playing. As cool as that would be, I would love that museum, but we're probably not going to see that because it's art for commercial consumption. So, yeah, I don't know. I would love to see what kind of video makes it into a museum. I've seen a few art installations that included video, but I haven't seen any video where the video itself is, in fact, the art and it being in a large gallery. Gigafish said, I tried to understand why it was painted. Yeah, that's a good point too. Because we can look at the art and try to extract meaning or intention from the image, the painting, the poem, whatever it may be. But definitely understanding, yeah, why did someone do this can also be an added layer there. There's so many layers to good art. And I think good art doesn't necessarily always mean art that you personally like. I don't mind looking at art that I hate if it gives me something to really think about and consider, even if at the end of the day I say, well, I've considered it and I've decided that I hate it. It's like, wow, I thought a lot about this piece, and that means that the intention that the artist had of sharing this and having someone like actually consider it is accomplished, which is great. That's all we can really hope for when we're looking at art, or when we're, more importantly, when we're making art. Nothing hits better than cold water, folks. I am probably going to go ahead and announce the end of this particular live stream. Now, again, I just moved into this new place, finally got it set up, so I hadn't done a live stream in about a month. So we'll get back on the regular rotation now that I've done it. I'll do some testing and I'll see if this little Sony camera in fact is dead, and if so, we'll figure out a solution in the meantime. Maybe just use the Canon for now. But the live stream will go on. In a way, I do kind of hope that this camera is dead, because if it is, that means that that's what's been plaguing this live stream the last 6 months, with the camera coming on and off. And so if that's the case, then I can just get a different camera set up here and know that, hey, our problems are over. There'll be new problems, of course. That's how live streaming goes. Audio won't work, something else won't work, a light will break, whatever it is. But at least the video component would be solved. So no complaints there. But yeah, that said, we'll do some more live streams. Videos coming out every week. Check out the channel. One just dropped today. And then I've been doing better, putting out some shorts for each of those videos. And then we will be, as we talked about at the beginning of this stream, finally have this Canon EF 70-300 L lens. And so we're going to go shoot IndyCar in July at the California Laguna Seca track. That's going to be awesome. We're going to practice with this lens a bit before we go do that. So this weekend, in fact, we're going to go out and shoot some motorsport racing with this lens, get some practice. And so maybe on the next live stream, I can jump in and kind of review some of the images from that practice session and see how it goes. But I want to really at the very least, get the skill set down so that when we go shoot IndyCar, we're not learning on the fly. We've already got that sort of thing ironed out. So that's going to be the goal for sure. And that will also likely involve some videos and quite a few other really good ideas coming to the channel that I'll keep fairly under wraps. But yeah, if you're interested in this content, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell. I hope you won't regret it, but that's up to you. Best sales pitch in the world right there. But yeah, so that's the stream, though. I do appreciate everyone jumping in. You know, wish we could have had a really smooth stream, being that we got this one promoted. But who knows? Maybe in the future we'll get another shot at being promoted on YouTube, and maybe that stream will be much more successful. But I appreciate you guys who jumped in here and chatted with me, and definitely everyone who sort of bared with me as we fixed some of the issues here. I think we still had a good one, though, overall. So I'm happy with it. I wasn't going to do it in the first place, and in the end, I'm satisfied that I rallied and did. So, yeah, otherwise, if you want to stay connected, or you're interested in just kind of seeing what this weird guy over here is doing photography wise, also on Instagram and Blue Sky, a little bit more active on Blue Sky right now. So maybe that's something, if you're interested in checking out Blue Sky, you'll already have one friend there. So anyway, that's going to do it for me though, folks. Appreciate you guys. I'll see you soon. But in the meantime, have a good evening.